everything you have blessed us with, our lives, our families, for this island that we call home and this incredible planet Earth. I thank you for this natural environment surrounding us that we all enjoy and recreate in, but ask for your help and guidance in protecting it for the future generations. While we have passed the peak of the busy summer season, we are just entering the active hurricane season. Please look over and protect all coastal communities around the world from these devastating storms. Please help us let others know hurricanes are extremely dangerous and not to be taken lightly. I ask that you look over and protect everyone who lives here, who visits here, and especially those who service in public safety and the military, risking their lives to save others. Please help us and guide us tonight as we tackle some of these challenges and making the right decisions that will take us forward in future generations. I rest in peace knowing that you are always looking over me and our island. Amen. Please join me as I say pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Nicole Deneen, roll call, please. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you very much. Before we do citizens' comments, we've got a special award tonight. I'm going to walk up front and ask this gentleman to join us up front. Most of y'all know him. He's not dressed in his normal attire. I'm going to say beat Santa, but he has another name. Howard Owen. Number one, I was given notes about Howard, and it says starting in 2018. But in 2017, I'm walking down the beach and I see this man in red pants and red shirt, white beard, hair, and candy canes out of the shirt. Just picking up trash. And I'm not always going up to people saying, "Hi, how you doing?" But Howard and I hit it off from that day forward. And from there on, he has been known not only here on the Isle of Palms, but across the Tri-Counties, picking up not only the beaches, but our rivers, boat landings, out in the country and the forest. I mean, I can't say enough. I want to also compliment Susan Hill Smith for her efforts in beach pickups on Monday afternoons. And Howard comes out many times, but she's the one who nominated you for this award. And it's very well deserved. So I'm going to read a couple of things. From the summer of 2018, I'm going to change that to 2017. Okay. To the end of May 2021, Howard has picked up more than 55,000 litter and debris items from the Isle of Palms Beach and more than 75,000 items from the streetscape and parking lots in the island's Front Beach Commercial District. That's more than 130,000 items of litter that he's collected on the Isle of Palms, and doesn't count the litter he's collected the year before he began officially recording and cataloging these numbers with the assistance of South Carolina Aquarium's conservation team and its litter-free digital journal. We got somebody from the aquarium, Kelly Thorbenson. She's another local hero. While some of these items were collected as part of Sweeps on the Isle of Palms cleanup, Howard often works on his own with or outside the aquarium, conservation volunteer with Linda Rowe, who helps him record the data, which is amazing to record everything. In fact, Howard has expanded his sweeps to the Tri-County, Charleston region, including many of the area's boat landings. I've already said that, sorry, I have to say it again. His astounding total litter collection, count the low country at the start of summer of 2021, is 425,445 items, and has done it all with a twinkle in his eye. This kind crusader gladly talks with those on the beach, even me, who ask about what he's doing, ready to share his message to all who will listen about the importance of doing our part to protect the environment and shared spaces. That's why I put that in my opening remarks. While he makes his home in Monk's Corner, he has become something of a goodwill beach ambassador and local celebrity on the Isle of Palms and the Tri-County, and has done many interviews with locals and state media. Plus, he has joined the Isle of Palms Holiday Street Festival more than once as our Santa. I don't know why, but he seems to fit the bill perfectly. But donating his parents, but also for charity and just as a goodwill ambassador. Again, there could not be a more deserving person to accept this. Since 2002, we've only given this out 7 times. Last year we did it with COVID, and we did it in a private ceremony. So this is the first time we've done it where everybody's here. So I want to thank you, and I believe we have. Susan, would you walk up here and stand on the side of the house, please? Thank you. Howard. Well,
First of all, I want to thank so many people. Thank you for, I got a chance to meet Jimmy on the beach. Soon thereafter, I met Susan on the beach. And I know that summer that Susan asked me to work with a group from the South Carolina Aquarium. And when I met Kelly, and she introduced the idea of me documenting items, I said, I don't have time for this. It's going to slow me down. Boy, was I wrong. I've done 974 sweeps. The numbers that Jimmy read were a while back. I think I'm right now over 400, I think it's 54,000 total items picked up and over 128,000 cigarette butts. I've done boat landings on both lakes. I've done 21 different roadsides up in Berkeley County. I'm part of working with Keep Berkeley Beautiful. I work with Santee Cooper. I work with Palmetto Pride, and I work with groups from Berkeley County. Now, and only Ed here too. Linda Rowe is so special. I wish she could have been here tonight. But she and I have done weekly sweeps since we first got together way back when. We'll do a weekly sweep. She'll meet me at my place. We carpool. She'll meet me somewhere. We come down here, but she's been a real trooper. And if I could show you my map of my sweeps, it's awesome to see the various locations I've done in the Tri-County area, especially down here at Isle of Palms on the beach, the boulevard, the parking areas. And you know what? I will hit 1,000 sweeps this summer. I'll be at 1,000. That's a milestone for me. And I think I'll get to 500,000 items picked up sometime. It's sad. I wish I could have a dream come true and never get to 500,000 items picked up. Wouldn't it be nice if I couldn't get to 500,000? That'd be wonderful if I could never get to 500,000 items. But I think I will. And then after I get to 500,000, I'm gonna take a couple days off. I do volunteer work every day. I do something every day. After church, I go out on Sunday. Some days I do 2 sweeps. I come down here, it just picked my target. I did learn how to keep the beach clean this Christmas. This past Christmas Day, I did the hatchery boat landing up in Cross outside of Monk's Corners, but I came down to the beach Christmas Day, and I learned how to keep the beach clean. If you have a daytime high temperature of 28 degrees Fahrenheit and a wind chill of 18 degrees Fahrenheit, the beach will be clean. So we need air conditioning on the beach, Jimmy. Thank you so much.
Howard, thank you very much. Kelly, please come up front.
I just want to add one more thing. It's really hard to imagine what 500,000 pieces of debris look like. Because a lot of them are small, like cigarette butts. But you guys, this is like dumpsters. I mean, this is probably a few dumpsters, like at least a couple of dumpsters full of a tremendous amount of trash. It's just numbers are sometimes hard.
If you haven't seen it, go to the aquarium. They have a wall of shame of plastics hanging there. And the sad part is 93% of all plastics are not recycled. They say they are, but they're not. And they're getting into our oceans and breaking down to microplastics, getting into our fish, our shrimp, our clams and everything. So Howard, thank you for putting a small dent, but a major dent for us in cleaning the beaches.
Yeah, well, the one thing I've learned when I work with people doing this for the first time, if you look for the plastic bottle or beer can, you're gonna find that and everything bigger. If you look for the penny, you look for the dime, you look for the cigarette butt, you're gonna find that and everything bigger. And when I go do the sweeps, I don't miss much. I just, if it's there, I'm gonna find it. And, with it, on Monday night, we had the beach sweep here again on Front Beach at 6 o'clock. We had over 55 people. I've inspired so many people to get involved with this. And, my inspiration is we get more people joining the activity with the aquarium. We got one more person not littering. Every person that joins is gonna stop littering and make the environment better for your great-great-grandchildren. That's what I'm doing this for the future of Kaylee's great-great-grandchildren. And she's not even married yet. That's the goal, that's the aim, and the back of my car window, I got the bumper sticker, keep Dorothy beautiful. And, I try to keep Isle of Palms beautiful too as well.
Thank you, sir.
But thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, moving on.
Can I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
add, for anybody through the rest of the summer through to Labor Day who would like to join us and spend time with Beach Santa, Isle of Palms cleanup crew will be down at Front Beach from 6 to 7, and you can find more details on Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much. Howard, Kelly, thank you all. All right, citizens' comments. Who do we have signed up first? Mr. Dr. Gary Nessler.
Nice job, Santa. Good evening. I have 3 topics to cover this evening in the small amount of time that I've given, so I'm going to get right to it. Gary Nessler, 17 22nd Avenue, Isle of Palms, South Carolina. Please do not put trash on my front lawn. Anyway, first and foremost, I wanted to remind you all that you are all public servants and that demands a higher level of standards, reasonableness, and an abundance of professional decorum. However, unfortunately, over the last year, several highly contentious matters of public interest forced these 3 things to be challenged repeatedly. My plea as a citizen is that you are willing and able to put your personal agendas, your anger, disrespect for others, which we have seen, ill-conceived negativity towards those who you might dislike personally and professionally, and are able to avoid putting continued, unwarranted, and observed undeserving pressures, some may actually consider that bullying, on Isle of Palms public servants and quell some unfortunate, mean-spirited energy towards some of the businesses that you believe do not align with your personal agendas. This is all about consistency, accountability, fairness, and balance. Consistency. It's noted that when you make a good decision and you're consistent, things go smoothly. When you don't, things go badly. However, do not vacillate between having one group being given an exception following one set of guidelines and then another group given another set of guidelines to follow, all in the favor of personal agendas. As a result of this, for example, you create controversy and unfortunately lawsuits, some in the amount of over $100,000 as public record has shown. And that's costing taxpayers money. And we don't approve of that. Accountability. When you state on the record that you're going to provide solutions to problems, and then there are countless unnecessary issues that are created due to, again, personally driven agendas, which force delays, then you need to be held accountable. So classic examples, the marina, parking, traffic, tidal wave, the selection of a fire chief, who is responsible for following up on these deliverable timelines? And to what end does all of these delays put us citizens at great public risk? Fiduciary responsibility, and lastly, balance. Whatever happened to things like the pay study for public safety services, did that just evaporate? There's no updates. And then you have the debacle of SCDOT, and there's a whole bunch of consternation that goes along with that. Additionally, at the last Ways and Means Committee, Councilmember Smith said that we have $1.9 million in the bank. So to give tenants, whoever they may be, a break would not be such a big deal. Actually, I agree with that. Matter of fact, I'm 100% in agreement with that because the tenants on our island really provide a great value, all the tenants. So I'm in 100% agreement. However, given the extensive delays that are caused by all these controversies, and finally, given that it's just the challenge of COVID, what I would suggest is maybe even consider giving them 2 years of breaks in rent and other concessions. Now, if you want to provide real solutions for real world problems, that's really great. I do recognize in closing that you run a giant business under a microscope. My urge is that you get back to business and put your personal agendas aside. Otherwise, people are going to end up dying, especially when it comes to public safety and public service. My end statement is, I always value public safety above all. I would encourage each one of you, as I look each one of you in the eye, do not put your personal agendas in front of our citizens, because you will lose. The citizens will win. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm Rick Esty. I live at 1530 Watt Pond Road in Mount Pleasant. And I want to say that this is the first time I've ever been to a council meeting where I wasn't trying to get a real estate development approved in front of an angry mob. So this is actually kind of nice. I have a week ago, Sunday, went out to the Isle of Palms Marina and have not been there in a couple of years. Went to go boating with some friends and pulled up in the parking lot. And before I even got out the car, saw the sign, paid for a full day. It was $11 to pay for parking for the day. Went out, spent 3 or 4 hours on the boat with some friends, came back and had a boot on my car. And I was not happy about it. So I called the Isle of Palms Police Department, just thinking they might have booted me. And they said, no, it's Acme Parking. And I guess it's a third-party vendor on behalf of the guys that have ground leased the marina. So I called the telephone number for Acme, and the lady that was there said, sir, there's only one remedy for you. And that is you got to use your credit card, pay a $250 fine, and then we'll send somebody out and take the boot off your car. So I said, well, I've got a paid receipt. You know, this is unacceptable to me. That's just crazy. So I went to the little general store there at the marina, and then they sent me over to the fuel docks. I guess those are the point people who kind of administer that. And there were 3 people in there working, and they said, you know, show me your paid receipt, which I did. And they said, okay. And they said, this happens all the time. These people come out, they put boots on cars. And apparently there's some younger kids that are working on behalf of Acme. And apparently if they put a boot on the car, they get a quick $50 bonus. And one of the kids, it was 2 of them, they looked like they were probably 18, 20 years old. They said, we don't even have a key to unlock those. And there's nobody here. You can't get a representative, you know, from Acme. So they literally came out to my car and used some bolt cutters and cut this thing off. They said they do it all the time. There were 3 or 4 other cars out there that also had boots on their cars. One of them had a Florida tag on it. I got to believe it was probably a very unhappy tourist who's looking at the town of Isle of Palms and saying, wow, I came here to have a good time at the Isle of Palms, and I'm not having a good tourist experience. It's hard to take what an 18-year-old is telling you, is the law, but it sounds like this is a repeated problem. In fact, one of the cars that had a boot on it was the kid who worked for the Isle of Palms Marina. And so he said, this is going to start a war. He said, the lady for Acme who represented Acme gave me an email address to email a copy of my receipt and whatever else I wanted to say to him. And I sent that. I said, I'm here. I paid for this. This is unacceptable. And, if it was just an oversight one time, I would just say, wow, it's just my bad luck. But it sounds like this is an ongoing problem. This is, from what I understand from the kid who worked at the marina, this is the 3rd operator that they've gone through now, and they're still having problems with it. So I'm really here to make you aware of it. I mean, it was one of those days where somehow or another, in the midst of all of it, my cell phone fell in the parking lot, and a car pulling a boat ran over it. Then my when he took the boot off my car, it scraped up my rim on the car. So, sorry. Okay, yeah. Anyway, long and short of it is there's a problem there. It would be nice if somebody could investigate that and see what's going on with it. So thank you for letting me be here.
Nicole? Anyone else? Okay. We have 30 minutes and I'm gonna allow anybody who is here who wanted to say something. Going once, twice, moving on. Consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Usually these are items that are unanimous in decisions. One of them was not unanimous. Number E, consideration, recommendation, ways and means. We're gonna bring that to ways and means later in the agenda. So the 4 items we're gonna approve, or hopefully approve, previous meetings minutes, public hearing ordinance 2021-05, budget, public hearing 2021-07, flood ordinance. Number 3, regular meeting, 6 PM, June 22nd, 2021. B, consideration recommendation from ATAX Committee of an application by the Carolina Coast Surf Club for $1,000 to sponsor the camera front beach. C, consideration of recommendation from the Real Property Committee to approve change order for ATM contract for the rehabilitation project to amount of $40,000. And D, consideration of proposal from Thomas and Hutton in the amount of $102,000 for bidding and construction oversight phase 3 drainage outfall projects. Yes, sir.
I don't know exactly how this works, Nicole, but I do have a correction to the minutes of June 22nd.
Pull the minutes from the consent agenda. and
Okay.
then when we can put that separately.
Okay, thank you.
So we need a motion actually to pull the minutes. No?
We'll just put both of those items and E, the minutes for June 22nd, E out of the consent agenda, you can take that.
Okay.
So do I hear a motion to approve A, B, C, and D?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Clarify, you're approving A, but not the public, not the regular meeting.
A1 and A2.
A1 and 2, that's all, not 3.
Okay. And that was the motion I heard. Is that correct?
Correct.
Exactly what he said.
And that was the second.
Okay. Nicole, could we have a roll call?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on. Reports from standing committees.
No, wait, we still have to take up the ones not-
I'm sorry.
we still need to take up the regular
Correction.
meeting of June 22nd.
What page am I on here?
It's right here.
Well, no, we just pulled that. So what are your corrections? Councilmember?
The corrections on page 2, under item I, consideration of proposals to extend builders risk insurance coverage for the dock project, an amount of $47,602.39. The minutes state that I voted nay on that, and I voted aye.
I will.
It should be Moy. Ward is listed as voting aye and nay.
And it should be you as voting. Okay, I'll go back and look.
Moy is the nay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the minutes. Yes, in there.
You're just overly zealous.
I'm sorry.
You need a motion to approve as amended.
Do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second. Should be
All in
two
favor?
votes.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Pound,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hobson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
all in favor?
Now that we have everything correct as amended, moving on to reports from standing committees. And before we get into ways and means, we have a presentation from Daniel Brock from CARTA. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, council. I wouldn't even classify it quite as a presentation. You guys have a, yeah, we'll keep it brief. You guys have a narrative of the CARTA budget in your packets. And each year, each of the municipalities involved in the CARTA board are asked to review and approve that. I will say that 2020 was a very interesting year. for public transit as it was for all. And CARTA kept service on the road the entire time, despite facing some severe challenges and hardships in order to connect essential workers to their jobs. Obviously, the big news for public transit on the Isle of Palms in 2020 was the Beach Reach shuttle. We worked very closely with Desiree and her staff on that, have made some adjustments to that as we've gone forward, as we've heard feedback. And so the shuttle is running every Saturday and Sunday, and we'll be doing so through Labor Day weekend. With that, if there's any questions, I'll take those. And otherwise, I will abscond back over the bridge.
Daniel, before you abscond over the bridge, I believe y'all bought some vans that were going to try to help our commercial districts. It didn't happen this summer. We weren't quite ready for it. Is that still on the platter for next year?
So the van pool program is interesting. BCDCOG right now, which oversees CARTA, is standing up a van pool program and had gotten some way in discussions with some of the larger employers on the island. There are some just pieces that have to fit together for a van pool to work. You have to have enough riders, at least 4, that live in a generally same area that work the same shift so that the program would work for them. So we started with 25 at Wild Dunes. We ended up getting 5 names. And then by the end of it, there were no suitable candidates at that time. Some other folks on the island were looking to take advantage of the program in more of a shuttle way, but there are restrictions with the grants that don't allow that. All that being said, we are certainly open to continuing this discussion. We'd love to work with the leadership here in the town to identify some more opportunities here, continue exploring Wild Dunes. Obviously, traffic and transportation are a huge issue throughout the region, and anything that we can do to be a partner with you all on that, certainly open for it. But we do have the vans in place now at the COG, so if the opportunity did arise, we'd certainly be open to continuing to pursue that.
Since we have Daniel here and Council, yes, sir. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here,
Yes, sir.
Daniel. Just a quick question about the Beach Reach shuttle. From CARTA's perspective, how are we evaluating success and how do we know whether or not it's going to persist in subsequent years?
Sure. So I would say operationally, it has been a true success. Getting over the bridge, delivering folks on time, getting back to Mount Pleasant Town Center, and certainly a big thank you to Town Center for their hospitality. I'm not sure if you guys know, we had a contract with the county at the DMV, and that was superseded when the Coast Guard is using that facility as a vaccine location. So for a while, we had some question marks about what we wanted to do there. So Town Center stepped up, allowing the use of their facilities. Then here on the island, obviously some of the traffic patterns were different, and there have been some adjustments made there as well, but we got everything, I think, to everyone's liking in terms of where we're boarding and alighting. We're about halfway through right now. We've had about 317 riders at this point. I think what we're going to do is see what the back half of the summer looks like, and then come back to the partners. You all, Town of Mount Pleasant, Charleston County, sit down and discuss it at that point. But I think at this point, it's a little too early to discuss the future as we get through this beach season.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. I have some questions about how you're promoting it. If you could give some information about that. And I'm curious to know if you are actively reaching out to hotels, especially the ones right around the end of the connector, to promote use so that they may pass that along to the people that are staying there.
Sure. Yeah. Our marketing folks have done on the ground outreach. So foot traffic, and certainly it is a warm time of year to be doing that. But they have done that multiple times. Certainly we had to update all the collateral that came through. So there was another round that went there as well. There's been social media paid promotion behind that. So not just an organic post here and there, but certainly targeted and paid advertising behind that. And then the media outreach through this as well has been thorough. I don't think that awareness is the issue. I think it's just getting people to adopt a new way to reach the Isle of Palms. And honestly, that's going to take some time. But again, the reports from those who have ridden, who have come on the Beach Reach have been sterling. 2 examples stand out to me. One was a grandmother who had not been to the beach in 36 years since her husband had died, and brought her grandson out for the first time. So was able to reach the beach for the first time doing that. And then another was a couple from Atlanta who obviously had heard of the program, who had unfortunately received a ticket the previous week and instead opted for the Beach Reach Shuttle the next time. 2 kids with them, brought all their stuff, easily done back and forth. So when it is being utilized, it is working very well for those riders, and the outreach continues, throughout the season.
Perfect. And I would suggest if you aren't already working with the CVB to use their network to help get the word out.
Yes, ma'am. We
That
are.
might be another valuable partner for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Daniel, thank you very much for working with this. As you know, there is a little transportation, traffic and parking issue around the area, and we appreciate y'all trying to help us out.
Very good. And if I may, while I'm here, I did want to leave these flyers with you. We have one other effort going on at COG right now called the One Region Roadmap. We're looking at a regional recovery and resiliency plan. So I want to make sure that all 27 local municipalities are aware of this, as well as our 3 county governments. We've got the private sector, public sector working together on that. For those in the crowd, there is a survey online through August 20th at oneregionstrategy.com. So feel free to provide your input there as well.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
much.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair.
We need a motion and approval of the budget.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 22 budget for Carter.
Second.
Do I have a discussion? I'd like to say one thing before we vote on it. Last year, we didn't support it because we didn't think we were getting anything in return. And I think they really have proven themselves standing up and saying, all right, we've got to help these beach communities get people to and from. And just get it advertised, get more people active, but I appreciate them jumping in there and helping out. Anyone else? Hearing none. Nicole?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. So we'll do quick financial results and then we'll do a minutes review and we have one item that we need to vote on. Mayor, to your earlier comment, pull it out of the consent agenda. So Amy, if you'll put that up. This was not in the packet. There are a few extra copies here for folks in the room. If you would like to have one, Nicole or Desiree, I think they're right in front of Brent, actually. So these are our results. Our fiscal year ends June 30. So these are our preliminary results from June 30. We have about 4 or 5 mainly revenue items that will accrue back into the June 30 statement. That'll happen over the next 45 days or so. We'll wait till she gets it on screen, and then we'll go. Fair enough. All right, so revenues are just under 20 million. Again, this will be adjusted. Thank you, Amy. This will be adjusted for whatever we wind up getting. Chief, heads up.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Spirits.
So that's how this meeting's
So-
gonna
For those watching at home, there are some technical difficulties happening in the room, but that's all right. So anyway, again, revenues are about just under 20 million right now. We're projecting to end the year at 21.7. And I think that's, again, probably even a conservative estimate at this case, at this time, depending on what we get from the county. Expenses are about 18.3 roughly, and we're going to end the year at about 19.6. We'll have a decent surplus in the general fund of about $1.9 million. And again, I think that's a conservative number. We'll probably be a little bit above that by the time the dust settles. With everything will accrue back to June 30. Most of our expense savings are coming from the completion, the savings from the public safety building, and actually a couple of delays in some spending that we didn't do in fiscal 21 that we're pushing to 22. We have about $25.5 million in cash deposits. About 5.5 of that is unspent bond proceeds on phase 3 drainage and the marina. And about 7.3 is restricted for other tourism expenses. So all in all, a really, really good year when we had no idea that we would finish up this way. So questions? Yes.
I would just like, because Mr. Nestler brought up my comment at our Ways and Means Committee meeting that we had $1.9 million in the bank. The more accurate way to say that was we are carrying over $1.9 million in surplus. We actually have much more money than that in the bank, and I don't want anybody to think that we are cutting it that close, but the extra, it's more of a cushion that that we have that I think, well, I won't go into the
That's
details,
all
but yeah.
If we only had 1.9 million in the bank, the rest of
We
my
would
hair
be
would
in
fall
trouble.
out. I can assure you that. So, Mr. Mayor, our Ways and Means, we met on Tuesday, July 20th, 6 PM. Had a financial report from our treasurer. Desiree ran through all of our capital projects updates, and those are in the Ways and Means packet. There's about 6 slides, I think, that are in the Ways and Means packet for residents and anybody else that would like to see that. It's a pretty good detail of all the projects that are going on the island right now. A lot of really good items. Most of our items were hit on the consent agenda. The one we need to discuss and take action on tonight is consideration and recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee to delay payment of base rent to 2021, which is $40,000, and be paid no later than 12 months from the restaurant's opening date. So if we can have a motion and a second, we can open it up for discussion.
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
Second.
Thank you. Desiree, anything else you want to add before we jump into that, or questions from council, comments from council? Jimmy?
Legally, are they in danger of being in default of their lease, since we don't have an ordinance that's been passed to amend this?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And Desiree and I had this conversation actually today, just to make sure we weren't going to misstep, because as you're getting to, August 1 is their first payment date
Right.
of this $40,000. Desiree, I'll just let you cover it.
Procedurally.
Would you get on the mic, Desiree?
There's gonna be an action item of council, so an official vote of council tonight, deciding whether to delay the payment or not. We still need to go through the motion to get it, to get the lease amended so that it reflects the change. But it's not like the city would go to them and find them in default after council took an action. That's how you all work.
Yes, one more comment. I would prefer that they start making payments and then negotiate any concessions that we might consider. But that's just how I feel about the situation.
And Jim, sorry, Ryan, were you gonna say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm out. I wasn't here during the Ways and Means meeting, but I was able to watch it, and I did not have a strong enough Wi-Fi signal to dial in, believe it or not. But as I was watching it, I had some trepidation about this as well, of delaying it, and it just, we have an active lease in place, and we have it for a reason. And I think as maybe one of a couple of folks who've had brick and mortar stores up here, we know what it's like to, fall under, to make these payments and be held accountable for them. And so, but that's really it. It's just, I think we have something in place. I'm not even quite sure why it even made it to the agenda in the first place.
Other questions, comments, Mayor?
If you don't mind, they started off with an estimate of around $2 million, I think, for the renovations of this building. And then, of course, COVID comes along and everything, every item, lumber, material has escalated in price. And not to mention the ongoing renovation of the marina down there. I think they're getting close to $3 million in renovations of that building down there. And the last thing I think we need to see as a city is to have a building that's standing there and, be letting it go. And we lose a tenant who's working on renovating this building. So again, my hat's off to they're taking on this project. Everyone in this council has walked through that building and saw the damage, the extent of the damage that nobody knew about. I mean, it looked as bad as my house with the termites, if not worse.
Randy?
Just a couple points, same points that were made at the Ways and Means meeting. Private debt funding, debt service that's still occurring, and zero revenue. So any comparison to existing brick and mortars, this is a building that they took on as a city project frankly, that we could not have done ourselves, put their money, their sweat equity, put their homes on the line with zero revenue coming in right now. And this is a delay, not forgiveness, for some people that have pretty dedicated to improving the quality of the marina for all of us. So, you know, the zero revenue thing is a pretty big deal when you're servicing debt and watching cost escalate and delaying the opening because of COVID and because of delays in the availability through the supply chain of materials. So it's, you know, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Mr.
Kevin.
Mayor. Yeah, I'm sort of gonna echo a little bit of what Randy just said. This is unprecedented times. I mean, I've been in the land home building business for over 30 years and I've never seen anything like this. I'm doing a project right now where I just ordered cabinets. It's 12-week lead time. These guys are under all kind of same pressures. And as Randy said, we're not forgiving this money. All we're doing is just pushing it out there and helping them. We're in this together with these guys, whether we like it or not. Yeah, we're the landlord. They're the leasee, but we're in this together and we're getting a brand new building thanks to them. So I think a little bit of help is deserved.
Rusty.
Yeah, I just want to say also, I'll be voting here shortly to approve this. I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm not going to repeat the reasons that that my fellow council members, Popson and Bell, just elaborated on. But there's a lot of money out there in terms of what they've invested. Starting to make some real progress now as things are looking much better. And again, it's delay, not forgiveness, and I'm definitely supportive of it.
Other comments, questions? I'll just say a couple other items too. And Jimmy Ward, I don't disagree with your comment at all about how this was brought forth. I would have loved to have seen an August 1st check and then some conversation. And Ryan, to your comment too, you know, I've been all over this decision and back and forth, and it may be my old banker hat is still on a little bit tight to say, you know, it doesn't feel great. But, you know, it's $40,000. We're going to get it in 12 months. Again, I've kind of been on both sides of this decision, and to all the conversations that's just been had, and given the amount of money that we're talking about, I got okay with it at the end of the day. So, Nicole.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Nate?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Only other item, Mayor, our next meeting is Tuesday, August 17th at 6 p.m.
Great report. Any other questions? Hearing none, moving on, public safety.
Okay, Public Safety Committee meeting was held Thursday, July 1st. All members were present, Bell, Townsend, Ward. The first item, we changed the order and cut a break to police and fire and had them on the front end of the meeting instead of sitting through the whole balance of the meeting. Deputy Chief Hathaway reported there were 112 calls for service in June, which is down 6% from June 2020. Some notable things, Fire Marshal Trevor Stafford shared details of the Fire Safe South Carolina Community Award given to the IOP Fire Department for 2020, one of only 80 departments in the state to receive it. And departments must achieve 14 goals throughout the year to be eligible for the annual event. I'd encourage people to look at that on the video because it's nice to see our public safety officials winning awards. Police Chief Cornett reported there were 1,100 calls for service. Notable 10 DUIs, DUI arrests, 1,057 parking tickets. 4 officers were recognized with the Bronze DUI Hero Award for their work enforcing DUI laws, and Officer Tuminelli was recognized as Employee of the Quarter. Notable for the police department, the chief reported, and I think the number is now 5, but that we were 4 officers short in staff and are seeing the effects that are being seen all over the country for the ability to recruit police officers. And I think we need to pay particular attention to that with both the work we're doing with the personnel committee and helping the chief with the attraction of officers. Update on the Carta Beach Shuttle Service. I won't repeat what was presented by Carta. There was discussion about the rerouting. There was also expression of concern from the police chief and administrator for GOSO that we've got to monitor what this does to the traffic at Front Beach and whether we're solving a problem and creating another problem. We had discussion of dog leash rules and enforcement, and Councilmember Ward suggested that staff draft language for the committee to review next month. That in particular was based on the prior Public Safety Committee's meeting where we had asked that if we're going to have ordinances, I'm really resisting making the pun here, but put some teeth into it. And I honestly was going to say that without any thought, but being a dog leash thing. But the issue really is, you know, when you get a very minor fine for a pretty egregious act that your dog might commit, that, you know, that we make it painful on those dog owners who don't control their dogs and who cause, you know, some of the issues that we've had before this council with some pretty serious damage to people. So we'll be looking at that going forward. Chief, I don't know if you want to update, did we hire the animal control officer? You can't always sit in the back of the room and get away with. He had an animal control officer in the queue when this meeting occurred.
We have received numerous applications for the animal control position. The majority of them failed to follow up to give the proper documentation to proceed further in the process. So the 4 that were remaining are going through the process and being interviewed this week.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Chief, was that one of the 4 that were down?
No, sir, that
No.
didn't count. Those 4 and 5 were specific to police officers.
Duty officer.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
We had a discussion of the unregulated and unsigned right-of-way parking, and basically this came about as a result of some of us receiving complaints about the parking at the post office. And the action was to actually advise as to what is city property, what is not city parking, and what we have as unsigned parking. And frankly, if it's unsigned and we don't have parking regulations posted, people can park there. So it was more of a point of clarity. Had a discussion of the beach service officers' roles, responsibilities. I think we all continue to receive concerns, you know, thinking that these folks are working 7 by 24 and specifically what is their task and duty. And the chief was kind enough to review that with us. Obviously includes writing parking tickets and violations for beach offenses. And I did suggest that they make sure that as we look at an overcrowded and overflowing marina, that we have particular attention to not encumbering those areas that we've set aside as a council for community use. We had discussion consideration of installing a stop sign at the intersection of 41st Avenue and Wildwood. And as some of you know, before I was on council, I was a little vocal about speeding on 41st. I'm still vocal about speeding on 41st. That is a school bus stop. It is a tremendously traveled pedestrian road, particularly in the summer. And because I live there, I watch it every day as women and fathers with their children are avoiding some of the speeding. And on an anecdotal and ironic notice, I got in my truck to come to this meeting. It's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. The first car was 37. The second one was 44 miles an hour as I got in my truck. And I did what I always do, walk out, point to the sign and yell at them. And I will continue to do so because it is dangerous. And we had discussions with Secretary Hall regarding that intersection. And we've had lots of discussions with Chief Graham when she was with the fire department about everybody wants us to put speed bumps. We're not putting speed bumps. So the alternative is you have a straightaway to the marina. And I just jotted down a couple of notes. In the packet is that sign collects some pretty cool data for analytics. It's really boring unless you really like that data. But in 2019, it was more than 30% of the cars speeding, and you can look at the graphical data as to what that means. But I just noted, and maybe it doesn't feel like a big deal, but the 30 days we just looked at, Desiree, I think was May. Yeah. 2,146 cars doing between 31 and 35 miles an hour, 245, 36 to 40. And that's on the inbound. On the outbound, 7,300, speeding over to 30 miles an hour, 2,269, 31 to 35. And the bottom line is, we don't have a restaurant open. And I keep making the point, there's a rumor that when people go out on their boats or go to a restaurant, there might be alcohol involved, towing 3,000-pound boats. And I personally have a concern that it's pretty egregious. It's about a half a mile of road. It's a straightaway, and I think it's unconscionable to not make an attempt to at least trial a stop sign at Wildwood for the 90-day period that Secretary Hall has agreed to. And I think, Desiree, I have to make a motion on that, or somebody does, to move that forward.
Yes, it's included on the agenda.
So I will make a motion to do that and monitor and see what impact it has on public safety for that period of time.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
Question.
Jimmy, please.
With the numbers that you were showing us, is that related to a percentage amount of traffic on the road?
Yes.
And if so, do you have the percentage of people that were obeying the law?
You have that in your packet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was pretty close to over 70%, wasn't it?
Yeah. So 30%, you're okay with
So-
30%
No, no,
speeding?
I'm not.
I'm
I'm
just-
just saying it's an improvement. And that's good. And so we can always look for more improvement, but I was just wondering, I didn't want everybody to think it was 100% of people were speeding, because it's not.
Well, it's in the packet.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Jimmy, please.
Clarification. When we do this, it's gonna be a 90-day trial period, but we're gonna wait till after the season because we've got the drainage plan that needs to be installed. Am I correct in saying that?
That would be a request from staff, that the pilot program begins after
Okay.
the project of 41st Avenue, one of the small but high impact internal projects. That we're waiting until after Labor Day to get completed because of, it's just gonna skew the data potentially, because we would have to reroute those vehicles from
Yeah.
either Wildwood or 42nd for several weeks. So that would be a request.
Agreed. And secondly, what I was trying to do is get out in front of a restaurant opening that is going to be a destination. And we're going to see minimally the kind of traffic that we saw pre-COVID coming through the neighborhoods. And in the overall scheme of what can we do to make it safer for the community, I thought this was appropriate.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So I see we obviously have data, but when we do something for a trial or a pilot, usually we're trying to achieve some obvious result, and safety is the kind of broad result. Is there a specific thing that we can hang our hat on that we say, if this, then we have been successful and we want to maintain
Well,
this after the pilot period, or how will we know?
As noted, there will be opinions, but we don't have anything on this island with more data than is available on that street in terms of traffic. And what I personally would look at, did it have an impact on the percentage of cars speeding down 40 for up and down? And by the way, you want to look at data, go to 2019, which is a public record, where we had over 50,000 cars a month and over 30% of them speeding. So, John, in my opinion, it's watching this every day. You have to slow down to a stop sign, right? Somebody said to me, well, they might just roll through it. You know what? They slowed down. And for the public record, I did contact people that live on that corner with children and asked what they thought. And they said, do everything you can to ensure the safety on this road. So, to me, when I apologize, but when I came before council, when I wasn't on council, I did the math to say, how many additional seconds in your life does it take to do the speed limit on this road? And it's fractional, and it's not an inconvenience. And, if it saves one child's life, then it was worthwhile. And I frankly, John, I don't know, but I will tell you this, when I watch cars, and Chief, by the way, had one in 19 doing 80 miles an hour. So we were debating, was it a motorcycle? This is a daily occurrence. I will tell you that our officers don't have the manpower to monitor these roads that are heavily trafficked roads with pedestrian traffic alongside. And I just think it'd be irresponsible not to at least try something. And that's frankly all I've got to say on it before the vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can I
please.
say something? I'm up and down 41st a lot too, and I see the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of speeding that goes on that avenue, 41st also for that matter. But I don't see any harm in doing a 90-day trial on this, evaluating the results. I am a little confused about what we're talking about timing wise, whether we do it right away or we wait to after the season.
Councilman, I'd wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need to rush to do this. We've been living with it. We've got a restaurant hopefully opening in November.
Okay, I'm good with that.
I was just gonna ask the chief if he had any thoughts or concerns or comments regarding this. Sorry to put you on the spot.
He's used to
Again.
public safety.
All right, sir. That's what you pay me for. So I do want to, these stats sometimes can be misleading. Sometimes you get high numbers. It could mean that you legitimately had somebody traveling at that high rate of speed. It could also be sometimes these radars. These are not LiDARs. LiDARs are lasers that lock specific on a vehicle. These are radars. So they will read an area, and sometimes they may read two vehicles at one time and will give you a higher number than what is elevated. Not saying that was the case here, just something to keep in mind it could be. I will say when we initially had this conversation, we spoke with Mr. Leapart from SCDOT. He was concerned that a four-way stop at that location would cause traffic problems at the three-way stop where 41st and Palm kind of come to go to Palm or to go towards Wild Dunes. He was concerned that it was going to cause more of a traffic issue there. And I know Mr. Leapart, we've worked on several projects in the past together. So he's typically, he's not just saying something because he doesn't want to do work. He's giving an honest opinion with those things. Does that kind of answer anything, any other questions that I can help with?
Well, that was one of my concerns. Are we just gonna clog down traffic getting off the islands by another stop sign and an access point getting off? Everybody cuts through every road, Cameron, and then, back to Waterway and so forth. So I was just wondering if it was gonna back up the effect.
That was Mr. Leapart's concern, was that it would cause vehicles, because it is fairly still close to that other three-way stop. And he was concerned that it may cause traffic issues there.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Let's just say in the worst case scenario that does happen. That does happen. Would you consider if the motion's been made for a trial period up to 90 days in case the wheels fall off? We said we need to,
I think we always have that option.
yeah, but
You're talking about amend the motion?
yeah. Just
Yeah,
to-
I don't,
up
just,
to 90 days. in
yeah, I
case-
mean, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know how you have anything conclusive without giving an adequate period of time. But,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it.
but we're gonna be after the season, Jimmy, and
Right.
if we're gonna have a backup, let's be realistic. We're gonna have a backup during the season or when the restaurant is open.
Well, I still like to make the amendment and then council can decide.
To change it so that it's,
Up to.
for a trial period of up to 90 days.
Right.
I'll second that. Frankly, I don't have a problem with it.
Just safety minutes.
Yeah, I just wanted to alert you all that if the trial happens in the off season, will likely not, if ultimately we'll have that four-way stop generate additional traffic backup on Palm Boulevard, we won't know until the summer. Off season, we won't have the same type of
That's right.
traffic.
Right.
So if, let's say we do 90 days from November through January, we won't know for sure whether or not it would have a detrimental effect to the
That's
overall
right.
traffic flow in that area.
We won't deal with that when we come to it.
Jimmy?
Desiree just created a new question for me. Thank you very much for saying that. The sooner we could get that 90-day period, if it's up to 90 days, installed, we'd have more of a accurate number of cars because more people are going to be boating and going to and from the marina. Because the season is September and October. I mean, to me, that's the best time of the year. So if we start in January, it's going to be slow.
So let me go back to Councilmember Moy's question. How do you know it's been successful? You know it's been successful if you reduce the overall percentage of people speeding on that road. And I would agree with the mayor. You're not going to learn anything November, December, and January. You will learn right now. And while I appreciate the radar data, I watch this every day, and I would challenge our enforcement to show us the ticketing on 41st as opposed to the speeding. And I don't believe it's there. I don't think we adequately enforce. And I'm respectful that we're short on police officers, but again, you know, that stretch of people in golf carts, bicycles, walking, strollers, is awful. And, you know, we're waiting on something to happen, and then we're all going to scratch our heads and go, wow, I can't believe this. I mean, I've got grandchildren, people up and down that road all day on the weekends. And by the way, there's only one side of the road you can walk on there. The other side is not available.
Mr. Chair, are we specifically including a time period in the motion? Or in
Well,
terms of the
that's not-
start time?
There's an amendment that was
Okay,
suggested.
great.
There was a discussion about when to start it. I happen to agree with the mayor. Measuring a dead zone time period, you know, in the winter time, you're not going to learn anything.
I mean, I think we'd all like to have it, but if we flip the switch with DOT today, it's gonna be 30 days before we get a stop sign in there anyway, and then we're on top of our drainage project.
I've learned that DOT can do things in a weekend if they choose to.
They can. I don't think a stop sign would go to the top of their list, but anyway.
No, actually, Secretary Hall has committed to do this. This is
I
not,
understand she's committed, but again, we're talking about, you want to try it for 30 days, let us do our project, and then,
let's,
I mean,
let's,
that feels. kludgy to
let's
me,
call
but-
for a vote. If people don't support it, then they don't support it.
I do have,
Yeah, please.
if I
Ryan.
can make some question. I mean, so we're looking at and going through the data and, you know, and the numbers are pretty interesting if you go through all of it, but you're looking at, you know, even if it's just, the speed limit there is 25 miles an hour, or, you know, the majority of the rest of the island is 30. And all the side streets at 30, you know, Palm Boulevard's 30. So you come around the corner, most people assume it's 30 miles an hour. So even just say, if you say the majority of traffic that's doing 30 and under, it's 95% of the traffic that's going through there is 30 miles an hour and under. And then I go through and
Not in the 2019 data, by the way.
well, I'm
In
looking.
the 1 month that you're looking at, you're absolutely correct.
Correct. No, I'm looking at the current data. And then, but then I go through and I think about, and I'm sure there will be folks driving or who have been out in the boat or perhaps maybe had a few drinks. And I just think trying to stop a 3,000 pound boat, chief, would be more of an issue or cars running stop signs under the influence, or, I mean, that's a whole different issue under the influence. And under the influence and speeding are two different things. And I think those have to be taken on separately.
I would agree. Now, speeding does play a critical role in vehicles that result in injury or death, but so do DUIs. I don't have the stats in front of me. I would say speed was the highest, but DUIs typically result in very bad collisions one way or the other. They're both bad, and both would take a similar but different type of approach to enforce. And of course, you know, if we have somebody traveling DUI there, that would be something that we would want to target our new traffic enforcement unit to that area to address the speeding or the DUIs. But that would be something that we have to keep in mind when that opens anyways. But there is always a potential when you have a four-way stop for a bigger collision in a road like that, because if they run a stop sign, they get hit on the side where a passenger is sitting, as opposed to running into a ditch on their own, which could still happen. It's kind of hard to say one way or the other how it could be. Both are dangerous.
But there was mention that you're having a hard time patrolling that area. And I mean, I get down to the marina. I go to there every morning for coffee. And I see folks there. I mean, is this new traffic division something that's going to take that up and deal with that? Or
The new traffic unit will be using the radar, the speed trailer, and the radar that's currently there to move around the island using our trailer to gather data so that we can strategically place our enforcement efforts for traffic-related violations, using the traffic unit to enforce those. I don't have the numbers in front of me on 41st, but I do know that there are 2 locations on 41st where our officers are consistently sitting. And they are out there doing enforcement on that road. They can't sit there 24/7. They can't sit on any road 24/7, but that would be something if we have issues, regardless where they are right now. We know that they're, with the traffic on the beach season, the traffic is on Hartnett and Cameron area. And so we're moving our officers to make a special effort in those areas to address the traffic related issues. So because those are where our residents live and things like that as well.
Since we have Chief up there, on Waterway Boulevard, we all know there's a shortcut off All Palms, and everybody likes to go down Waterway Boulevard to find that shortcut. Would you think that 25th and Waterway, that stop sign is doing the job it's supposed to be doing and slowing traffic down on Waterway Boulevard?
I can't say that I've sat on 20 or on Waterway Boulevard and not seen a violation to stop somebody ever, whether it was on one end of the stop sign or not. I do believe that we do see a lot of people that roll through that stop sign, and we do have a lot of enforcement that comes from that. Waterway is kind of different when you look at it, though. It's a wider road, and when you drive, there are a lot of things that come into play when we look at speed and even fog lines that are painted on the side of the road and the psychological effect of somebody driving. When it's wider, it feels like it's open to go faster. And so people will not even think about it and they'll go faster than 25 miles an hour. But do I think the stop sign necessarily stops that? No, we still do a lot of traffic enforcement on Waterway Boulevard.
Thank you.
I had a point, yeah.
Sorry, I just am confused a little bit about the overlap with the construction and the timing. And so I'm not sure who can speak to that, but we're trying to avoid what time period because of construction.
The construction in that and on 41st Avenue is scheduled to begin the week after Labor Day. So we have few more weeks between now and then, without any construction, but certainly would to also stand there and observe as part of the analysis and review of that stop sign during the trial period. But I don't have a timeline of, again, how quickly we can take advantage of the busy season.
And even if we did, we'd have just a few weeks before construction, and we really don't want this to be going on during construction, or it would skew.
Won't have an impact because you're gonna have to stop there anyway during construction because the road's gonna be shut down from Wildwood to the marina.
So, I mean, can I suggest that we see how this new unit can do during the tail end of this season, and then look at doing, if we need to, doing that study at the beginning of the busy season next year?
That frankly says kick it to the next council. And if that's, if that's the intent, that's the intent. I get it, if I had my way, this would have been done years ago because you can compare to Waterway, you can make all the comparisons you want. You have a half a mile straight away to the marina with a restaurant and boating. And Waterway is not a half mile. Waterway is 1.5 miles, 2 miles, right? The intention here is to forcibly cause people to slow down in a heavily traveled pedestrian area. If this council doesn't think that's a worthwhile endeavor, don't vote for it. I mean, personally, I'm not concerned about which state's administration decides to work with SCDOT. It could be we pass it now and decide to not do it until the spring. But the bottom line is something needs to be done for enforcement in any of the areas in this community that have, what I would consider egregious speeding. And that's not the only road. So, again, I've been on this soapbox for too many years now because I sit there and watch it on a daily basis.
But we've got 2 motions. Let's reiterate them and vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to say just one quick thing. The city, a couple of years ago, did make a formal request of SCDOT to look at installing a stop sign in that area, and it was declined. Because this issue came up again, we reached out to DOT, who said, if this is something that the city really wants to try and do, we'll allow it, we'll do it as a trial period. That's how it came about, their change of opinion.
They're actually talking to us now.
Just wanted to clarify that for any of you that.
The motion to amend on the floor, and that is to change it from a trial period of 90 days to a trial period of up to 90 days. That's the motion on the floor. I'm going to call a vote. Is that all right? Good. Councilman Thompson?
Nay.
Aye.
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 Councilman Buchanan?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Towns?
Aye.
Mayor Carroll?
Nay.
Discussion on the motion as amended to direct the DOT to install a stop sign temporarily at the intersection of 41, 40, for a trial period of
Mr. Mayor, I know we keep talking about this, but I feel like before we vote, we need to have some direction as to the timing that we're voting on. Even if that is just up to the discretion of staff, I need to know what something.
So John, if I may comment on that, right? And I would leave it to the discretion of staff. You know, having a stop sign there when we close the road doesn't serve a purpose. There's going to be a stop sign there anyway. If I had my druthers, and I don't know what Secretary Hall will agree to, but I will say Desiree has a pretty good working relationship with her. If you're going to do it, you do it now, when we close the road. You know, if we have 30 days of data or 60 days of data before the road closure, that's good data to understand whether we're having an impact, right? So John, to your point, I would leave it to Desiree to work with Secretary Hall and, I mean, it's taking a post hole and putting a stop sign in. It's not an overly complicated task for somebody who can restripe a connector in 2 days.
As I'm hearing, the sooner the better. Certainly we want to evaluate this effect of the stop sign during busy season.
For me, Mr. Chair. And I lived around there. I'd rather see it June, July, and August when it's the busiest time of the year. And the restaurants open and people are coming and going, as opposed to the slowest time of the year. But that's just my opinion.
Then it would kick to the next council.
Yes, it would.
I will also ask DOT engineers for the recommendation about those two options,
Yeah.
whether it's better altogether to use June, July, or August, or if we could do somewhat of a hybrid, this end of the season.
That's fine too.
We'll get some advice from the experts.
I mean, I'll just say that I think it's worth exploring and I think staff can best decide the timing.
Yes.
Councilman Buchanan?
Nay.
Councilman Bell?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Towns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman?
Aye.
Councilman Thompson?
Nay.
Mayor Carroll?
Aye.
Out of my wildest, that I think that would be the longest topic on the agenda. You know, this is kind of ironic that we're going into the next item, discussion of speeding issues on the avenues and consideration of reducing the speed limits on interior streets. I think we're all surprised at public safety, and I will admittedly say I was surprised to find that the interior street speed limits are 30 miles an hour, not 25 miles an hour. So we had discussion, and Desiree, I don't know if you want to comment on that. We were talking about consideration, and I think it would require council to move forward, since most of the streets are with SCDOT, in a request to lower those speed limits, correct?
Well, the committee discussed that certainly an option. I think that what the committee and staff ended that conversation at the committee meeting was to allow the police department to deploy their new traffic
Okay.
unit and the portable radar sign that we have to try to identify some of the hotspots and
Yeah.
do enforcement in these areas, and try that first before we go forward with potentially recommendations.
Thanks for reminding me. Okay. I was still hung up on stop signs. Update and discussion of the I'm sorry.
One
Yeah, please.
comment. After we had a discussion of public safety, I took it upon myself to ride around the island, see if I could find any speeding signs. And at the corner of 22nd and Cameron, there is A speed limit sign, it says 25.
Yeah.
It does.
You gotta find that one though.
It's the only one. I should have taken a picture of it. It's the only one I can find.
Yeah, and I'll just, I mean, I'll add in, there, yeah, there isn't signage, but I dare say a lot of people don't know what the speed limit is,
That's right.
but I personally think it should be 25 and not 30.
It's not posted, it's in 30 miles.
That's right. So the one area is posted as 25.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Chair.
Ryan, go ahead.
you are the chair.
No, we're talking about public safety.
No, I mean, this is chair of council, but we've brought this, when I was chair of public safety years ago, we've known that the island, interior island's been 30 miles an hour for some time. And I brought it up to DOT, working with them when Tommy was chief, of going through and trying to make, because I didn't want to go through and pollute the sign with interior islands with speed limit signs. And it was just try to make it go through and have, when you come across a connector, speed limit's 25 unless otherwise posted. And we broached that with SCDOT years ago and they turned it down. I think now that the fact that DOT is more or less more willing to work with us, that we, work with that as well and take advantage of that. at
We
this
did have
time.
that same discussion.
Yeah, and we've discussed this years ago at that time, and it come under, my committee. I can't remember when it was, a long time ago. But yeah, and DOT did not approve it at the time as well, so. And some of these other streets that you have, that have different speed limit signs, whether it's on 25 or 15 by the rec, those are city-owned streets, and we set those speed limits. So, and on those side streets. So any of those side streets that the city owns, we can adjust those side. And there are a few of them, but I think if you have inconsistency, it's gonna make it worse. I think it just
Right.
needs to be consistent throughout, and that's working with DOT and make sure that all the interior streets are 25.
Well, I agree, and we're just seeing the strain of the added traffic on busy beach days with people speeding between Palm and Waterway to try and find a faster way that's not really there. And so our interior streets are not built for that. Their neighborhood, they have kids, they have pedestrians, and we need to be adapting to protect them. And hopefully DOT will realize that.
On to the next topic. I have all the fun ones. Update and discussion of the study of the modifications to the IOP connector. So as folks may or may not remember, there was a commitment that came from Secretary Hall and Senator Campson that there would be a state-funded study of the impact, traffic overall. It was not just a connector study. And the commentary I think some of us have received, certainly on public safety from the community, has been around, well, how come we don't have a study one with the connector and we're in this busy season right now? And what about these new lines and all this? So, and Desiree, feel free to jump in, but my concern, like everything we talk about that requires a study is, what's the objective? What's the goal? What are we collecting data for? What are we doing with that data? And I don't think there's been clarity around what we're intending to find from a study. There has been difficulties that we discussed in public safety around finding neutral partners for the city, traffic engineers that have not worked with or not beholding to SCDOT. So Desiree and I did have that conversation with Secretary Hall in person. Secretary Hall has had some of the same difficulties that we've had. It's them finding someone to coordinate that study and us to find someone that is a community that we're comfortable with to provide oversight to that study. Having said that, this is the scary part. SCDOT collects a lot of data. They collect data from, for data geeks like me at a metadata level that you can track your cell phone in your car and provide information like the average speed on Palm Boulevard is 22.5 miles an hour, right? So there is data being collected. I think it's incumbent on us to do a little more definition as to what are we expecting from this? From this, Desiree, please do jump in. From Secretary Hall's perspective, and Desiree talked to her a week or so ago, this is not just a connector issue. This is the broader traffic and the impact of traffic lights at Rifle Range Road. The mayor had participated with other mayors in, what could you do? Could you have a circle at Rifle Range Road? God, Jimmy, I hate to say it, much like they have at Hilton Head, right? But what is the overall goal of a study? And I think we have work to do. And, we weren't clear in public safety as to what the objective of this study was, but just to let everybody know, that doesn't mean the work isn't continuing. So unless Desiree, did I do okay? Okay. The great discussion and presentation of True Grid material. So this goes back to also when Ryan was chairing public safety, and we looked at a material that where we have those side bumpers on the angled parking on Palm Boulevard that are so attractive with their 2-foot-high grass around them. Secretary Hall had agreed that that was temporary for this season only, and to provide some guidance for people that otherwise might not know how to park. And we looked at the cost per square foot of the True Grid material, $8 to $11 a square foot, right? We can build houses for less than that. And the problem is the substrate below that material, and the conclusion from Public Safety Committee, I think Jimmy Ward almost had a heart attack over it, was, well, this cost, if you look at the square footage that would be required to do this, it really is not an alternative. So I think what it did was send us back to give direction to Desiree to find something that is not $8 to $11 a square foot to provide the kind of aesthetics that we're looking for. We had a discussion about law enforcement assistance from Charleston County Sheriff's Office and the state in the overall, and I think we've actually seen some pretty good results recently. The chief commented that his partnerships and relationships with those sister agencies to be quite good. We had discussion of the challenges with the pedestrian median on Front Beach Ocean between 10th and 14th. This was also related to the conversation at the time around the CARTA buses. It's been an ongoing conversation through multiple councils that when you go down by the Windjammer and you look at the way that was designed, it was never designed with the intention of being able to move a large bus or a large fire engine around those corners. And the direction from that discussion was for staff to bring back possible changes to the area and bring back options. Because frankly, if we have a problem for our fire safety personnel and a problem for CARTA buses and others, it may be a relatively simple fix that could cost us up to 2 parking places in revenue, but might be a worthwhile city investment. Jimmy, did I cover that well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other than that, miscellaneous business, we adjourned and said we would have a meeting on August 5th, in spite of a lot of committees don't meet, but it's public safety and we're in the busiest season of the year. So we will have a meeting on August 5th.
Report.
So
Any
Ed's
questions
long
for public
report.
safety?
Don't we have to vote on the animal control?
It's another action item.
Top action item on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Discussion and consideration.
I actually do have it before we.
Yes, John, sure.
One quick comment. I was served up an ad from the Mount Pleasant Police Department today recruiting me. So they are, I shouldn't fit any of their algorithms, but they're looking. So
I don't know, John.
the dog breed issue, or rather the dog ordinance, one of the emails we got from a citizen recommended looking at some other statutes from other communities that have ordinances based on breed. And I felt like that was a really wise suggestion. So just a note for the committee to maybe
Well,
consider that. in
John,
future.
actually, and you're stirring my memory along with the police chief. The idea was, and I believe we thought we were hiring an animal control officer with experience, and we were going to defer any discussion to allowing that input from the animal control officer to guide our decision making. And unfortunately, we didn't hire within that time frame. So frankly, I don't personally believe we need to vote on something. We can still wait on an animal control officer to provide some guidance. Chief?
But this item's for the fine amount that's on the
Sure.
agenda.
Yeah.
That was just my
But we did
comment,
wanna
my
vote on-
comment on that agenda item,
Oh,
just
okay.
as for future discussion. I thought it was a good, worth.
We can still move on increasing fines if we choose to do so.
So I worked with the city administrator and we compiled a list of ordinances with our partners in the area. And what I found, my recommendation would be not to increase the fine. Instead, to look at some of our neighboring communities who have specific ordinances that address dangerous or vicious dogs, and to mimic an ordinance like that that we currently do not have. And those ordinances in that list I gave the city administrator, it outlines Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island, Edisto Beach, Folly Beach, Mount Pleasant, Charleston County, Dorchester County. And it goes through each one of those, whether they have, what their fines are, and all of their fines are the exact same as ours. And just as a educational piece here, we deal with fines. When we say that they could be fined up to so much, the fine itself is actually $500. And that is the max that we can do by ordinance. And then after that, there are court assessments that go into that. There's a calculation that the brain whiz Amy does over there. She has all of that stuff, and that is her world that I don't dare try to learn from her. She's got it down really well. So instead of changing our ordinance, which would make us different and higher than everybody else, my recommendation would be to look at the other ordinances that were outlined, to include state statute and mimic or develop a ordinance that would address the concern that we're really trying to address, which are dogs that are presumed to be dangerous or vicious. And in our ordinance, we should define what makes that a dangerous or a vicious animal, as most of these ordinances that were outlined in here do. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, I appreciate it. Right?
Mr. Mayor, yeah. The state statute 47350 says about allowing dogs or cats to run, but it says, it talks about it's unlawful for any county municipality to adopt provisions, blah, blah, blah. But it talks about keeping vicious dogs, unruly dogs under restraint by fence and different things. But it also goes on to say any person who violates the provisions is guilty upon misdemeanor and must be fined $50 for a first offense, but no more than $100 for each subsequent offense.
The way I understood that state ordinance was, if we adopted to enforce our animal control through that specific set of ordinances, that's what we would abide by. I do think that 47.3720, where it defines dangerous animals, or where it talks about dangerous animals, and goes on and outlines penalties further down for those things in 47.3760.
Right.
Those would be the state statutes that I would recommend we look at and go through. The difficulties with state statutes are that right now our animal control officer is not a sworn position.
Right.
It's not something that I'm opposed to making in the future, but right now they're not, so they can only issue city ordinance summons. And they cannot make a custodial arrest, whereas police officers can. But the goal of this would be to make something that our animal control officer can hit the ground and start making these charges as they need to.
Chair, kind of going back to your 41st Avenue and the 90-day trial period. Now look at this connector study. What good is it? And I'm saying this is the chief. You know, this is your first full summer of having a beach that's open, wide open, versus last summer when we had COVID out there. I mean, to me, a study should be done when we're having the highest traffic and cars coming on the island. I mean, what is your opinion on that?
I believe if you are looking for accurate statistical information, the best thing to do is to look at a length of time and compare those to one another. I think to look at anything compared to 2020, when we were in the midst of COVID, and honestly, even 2019, where we first started to feel those impacts, I don't know that I would use that data to make many decisions on much at this point, because they're skewed. You know, for us, I do believe in 2020, our numbers were higher in the public safety as far as calls for service and things like that, because we did see an increase in individuals coming to the beach, trying to get away and get outside, because that was a safe place to be. And so I believe those numbers for those months would be higher. And so I think anytime you're looking at data, you need to do it for a length of time to be fair. That way you're not getting just a small snap of what is actually taking place.
If I'm not mistaken, I think SCDOT has counters on the bridge, so we know how many cars are coming, no matter what time of the year it is anyway.
That's correct. And we can tell every year, there's always an increase during the summer. We've gone back and looked at that. That's consistent every year. Now, how much of an increase? I couldn't tell you. And I think the things that we would want to look at if we're looking at the safety aspect of the connector specifically would be emergency response and how that has been impacted. Not emergency response for police necessarily on Isle of Palms or for fire, but for our emergency partners in Charleston County, the emergency medical services that are responding over, were they delayed? I know of one incident that has taken place since the connector was changed, where we closed all traffic going forward, going off the island so that we could traverse the ambulance up that lane to get to the vehicle collision that we were working. But we've worked several accidents on the connector as well. But those would be all information you look at, not just how much of your traffic is coming, not just your emergency response times, how many collisions we have they increased? Have they decreased? You know, as compared, and you want to do this for several years to compare it to where we're at now so that you get a clear picture of whether it made things less safe or they remain the same.
So back to dogs.
Yes, sir.
So procedurally, we don't have to vote on this. Okay, I would recommend that we follow the chief's advice and, I hate to keep kicking that can down the road, but I think absent the animal control officer and the information you just brought up, I think we should, when you're ready, we'll put it back on the public safety
So
committee
you're
agenda.
taking a bite out of this.
So I'm just trying to stay away from that. Thank you.
So what's your report?
So ends my report. I thought it was done already. but-
Public Works did not meet. Mr. Chair, any comments or anything we need to know about?
No, I've received several phone calls about debris piling up on the road that I'd like people to understand that Donnie's extremely busy. And they did pick up debris on my street on Saturday. So they're working overtime and they're doing 2 trash pickups a week, and people are putting a lot of furniture and big items out that we can't afford to pick up anymore. But we're going through some changes, and I hope everybody just has some patience and remember that Public Works Department is working very, very hard. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add and reinforce that we have had some staffing challenges with the Public Works Department, some folks being on sick leave, understaffed for several weeks. But the department is working tirelessly, as you all know, working even on Saturdays to get the debris picked up. So we appreciate everyone's patience. It's just a busy time for the Public Works Department, and the staffing challenges have made it even more challenging.
Yes, Ryan, first.
So, yeah, I was talking to Donnie today about that actually situation. He says a lot of it's not here on the island per se, but it's the 3.5 hours
That's
that
right.
it takes to get from Isle of Palms to the disposal site and then back. And it burns up. That's what's burning up a lot of the time, not being able to make that route and that turnaround real quick. And that's what's slowing down now that we have to go all the way to the other side of Charleston.
Yeah, just, I'm gonna do what Susan normally does and talk about communication. I was on a walk talking to Donnie as well, same subject, 3.5 hours. People don't realize we've had our time doubled by the county for getting to the dump. And secondly, whatever we can do communication wise, do people really have to put half their household contents out on the curb right now? Mattresses, furniture, everything, without an awareness of the issues that we're dealing with. And I don't know what we're doing to convey that to people. But I gotta tell you, you go through the neighborhood and it's like, my God, it's like you gutted your house and stuck it on the curb right now when we're still dealing with, the after effects of COVID and people being able to work. So just a communications request.
I agree. I do think too that folks need to realize that the city code limits the amount of miscellaneous that you can put out by the curb to a 195 gallon container. So sometimes folks do put much more than that, and our public works crew is so gracious and want to be very accommodating to all the residents in the community. But the reality is that is adding to the strain
That's
on
right.
the public works department. So that is something that we're working through, with residents, making sure that we communicate that to them, because it's becoming a problem that needs to be.
One final note on this. I would like to see in the coming months, I'm going to bring it up to tightening up that yard debris ordinance. There's too many contractors to come out and in some rare cases, would imagine they are dumping their trailer as soon as they get here. You know, and it's coming from off the island. You feel that's true, Donnie, or not? Yes. So I would in favor of bringing up Public Works and see what we can do about tightening that ordinance up. That's all I have to say on that.
For not having a meeting, that's a good report. Thank you very much. Moving on to first, recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recreation Committee met on July 12th with Councilmember Pounds and myself. Councilmember Buchanan was absent. We had our staff, Director Page was present and gave us a report. Summer camps are going well. I think the minutes mentioned lower attendance due to staffing levels, but I think that was more, we had set lower camp sizes due to our COVID protocols. Otherwise, registration was starting for youth and adult athletics for the fall. And our rec director is working with the Exchange Club and the police department on a new course for the IOP Connector Run, which will be in October. But we have lots of other events coming up as well. We have a beach run, IOP Beach Run, which will be July 31st. We have Isle of Palms Farmers Market continues every third Thursday of the month. The next one will be Thursday, August 19th, and July was also awesome. Half Rubber Tournament, August 21st is coming up, so we have lots of things hopping. We touched on a couple of other issues along the way, and including potential for, we're continuing to explore yoga classes on the beach, and we're looking at the implementation of online registration for rec programs, which has been approved and funded in the upcoming budget, but will need to have some time to get put in place. But hopefully by the end of the year, we will have online registration, woohoo, which will be a really big leap, but hopefully much more customer friendly for our community. And our next meeting should be August 2nd at 8 a.m. Here
Great.
ends my report.
Great report. Any questions? Hearing none, moving on. Personnel, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Personnel Committee met on Friday, July the 16th at 3 p.m. Councilmember Bell and myself were present along with Administrator Fregoso and HR Officer Ladd. We did get an update on the wage and compensation analysis report that has gone slow due to a number of factors. One of those being a little bit of scope creep, where we've shifted the demands and requests from the group conducting the study for us a little bit. The good news is City Administrator Fregoso and HR Officer Ladd had received all of the raw data and some potential options for recommendations that they had just received immediately prior to that meeting. So they hadn't had a chance to really dig into it. And so the direction or the request from staff was to give staff time to digest the report, give feedback to the consulting agency, and then bring back final recommendations to council next month. So we should have recommendations, something to talk about in the next city council meeting. From there, we talked about a change to the hiring process to fill department head vacancies. This is a follow-up to a topic we previously discussed. And we do have a first reading of this ordinance on the agenda for later on. We've talked about this a few times, but essentially, when you look across the board at other governments, at other municipalities, we tend to maybe err on the side of micromanaging. And so this code is an attempt to address that and put the hiring process for department heads at the feet of the city administrator. And then finally, we did have discussion of applications for the Environmental Advisory Committee, which as always, was astounding to see what came through. We had 27 applicants apply for this committee, of which there are 9 openings. Again, I use the word astounding because the amount of expertise and just experience that exists on this island is staggering. So we talked about some ways that we could get this down from 27 to 9 in the most fair manner. There was a bit of information that we didn't know about some of the applicants. We did say that, and I believe this was Councilmember Ward's suggestion, that we should fill 1 vacancy with a college student, 1 with a high school student. We weren't really sure who was high school and who was college or who was not a student. So we needed staff to get that information for us. And then we also felt like there's probably a couple of different buckets of experience levels that we want to fill. First of all, there's people with master's levels degree in environmental science. I mean, several. Like, you're like, how in the world do we have this amount of experience here? So we chartered staff with kind of bucketing the experience that we felt like would be a good makeup for the committee. And I know it sounds like we're probably kicking the can on some of these things. In this case, there's not a super sense of urgency in kicking this off. And we wanted to make sure, first and foremost, that everybody who applied felt like they were fairly treated and that the process gave everybody kind of fair shot at being on the committee. We felt like the biggest thing that we could do, the biggest harm that we could potentially do, is to disengage members of this community. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone who threw their name in the hat understood the process that we took, that they were fairly considered, and that they would be encouraged to apply for this or other commissions in the future.
John, if I
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick comment to that, I think, because it felt a little like we're leaving Desiree rudderless on this, and that was not the intent. But if, any committee of this nature that has, high science background, content experience, we looked at 2 areas. One was leadership and science. The other one, the ability to build partnerships. So it might be a bridge of multiple disciplines. But more than anything, to make sure that there's leadership at the top, because I think anybody, I look at students joining this or just interested residents joining, you want to have a learning experience at the same time and something that we can build from. So hopefully, Desiree, that was clear enough direction, because I've had a few people ask, and I'm like, no, it wasn't, it wasn't just names in a hat. This was, we've got some really well qualified people that ought to be in a leadership role on this. Thank you, John.
Sure. And I know, and I've spoken to Councilmember Smith, and I appreciate you gave some great advice via email. So I appreciate that, but go ahead.
Well, and thank you. And thank you. This is a challenge for your committee because, I mean, the number of applications and the expertise that we're looking at, I was personally blown away when I reviewed them. So, but I think it's a fantastic challenge, and I'm just hoping that we get the committee off to its best possible start and take advantage of the expertise that we're seeing. And I think that everybody who's applied, at the heart of it, really wants to see this committee at its best, whether they're on it or not. And so I think had some concerns about the possibility of doing this via lottery because of the number. I really feel like the committee can be thoughtful and not only look at all the applications, and because there is a wide range of experience and some variety, for example, experts in wildlife, experts in environmental health impact on humans, that's represented, and make sure that we come up with a good, smart mix that doesn't leave anybody, if you are fielding an Olympic basketball team, you want to make sure that Kevin Durant is on there. And if he's not on, if he's available, and if he's not on there, because you didn't pick him because it was more of a lottery situation, you'd have to answer to some people about why, including Kevin Durant. So anyways, I respect and hope that the process will be thoughtful and take all the merit of the applicants into account, as well as creating a good mix of representatives to fulfill the mission of the committee. So thank you.
So is my, we meet again Tuesday, August 10th. So is my report.
Great report. Any questions for Mr. Chairman? Hearing none, moving on. Real property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to do my best to do this real property committee report justice, yet be brief and make up a little time if I can. We met at 1:30 PM Monday, July the 12th. We had council members Moy, Popson, and Streetman for the meeting, along with Administrator Fregoso and Director Carr. We had no citizen comments, no marina tenant comments. Under old business, we had an update on the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project, and this was on July the 12th. But then last week at Ways and Means, we had a great update from on the capital improvement projects that Desiree is now covering at Ways and Means. And I won't go into all of that, but Desiree, if you have anything to add, it looks to me with the update we got last week at Ways and Means that the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project is on track, doing well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jump in if you need to. Otherwise, I'm going to skip through it.
Well, I think I would just refer back to the presentation last
Mhm.
week, because there are a couple of changes in the schedule due to some material shortages, that is requiring contractors to identify alternative materials to do that. I know that there was a conference call yesterday that I was unable to meet with the contractor and the engineer. And so I'm hoping that I could get an update on those conversations tomorrow, about where we are on that. But it's moving along, slowly but surely, and we still expect to meet our new completion deadline by mid-November for the whole project to be wrapped up.
Okay, November the 19th is the date we're shooting for, or earlier, correct? Okay, and part of the other discussion on the Marina docks also is we did have some discussion about the potential cost of insuring the new docks upon completion. So I'm sure we're going to have further discussion on that down the road as well.
Yes, we will be to the real property committee next week, but we are seeing premiums at around 9 to 10% of total replacement value, which is, you know, the marina docks and the whole project, we're estimating about $4 million, $4.8 million of replacement value. So we'd be looking at an insurance premium of about $400,000 to $500,000 a year. At that point, the conversation was for the city to evaluate a self-insurance option, or potentially insure just some perils that are more palatable for these firms to insure. So that's part of the process that we're doing at the staff level, just seeing what our options are and what's the most, I guess, the smartest thing to do for us. And, you know, make a decision going forward about how to protect that.
Desiree, is your mic on? I just got a message that it may not be very clear.
It is.
Okay.
Usually don't have a problem projecting.
Yeah, right. No, I know you don't. Okay, moving on. Item B, update on marina restaurant renovation by Marker 116 LLC. We did have a brief update from Dave Lorenz, who gave some information on the renovations that time. And again, last week at Ways and Means, Desiree had an updated deck, a chart on the marina restaurant and the renovation, and it looks like everything's going pretty well there as well. And a lot of activity going on down at the restaurant now. I've been down there several times and doing a lot of work on the front gazebo, the bar, the back deck area, starting to look really good. And if you got anything else you want to add on that, Desiree?
Yes,
this
I just
point?
want to clarify one thing, since Real Property have had some discussions with the marina tenants, Chrissy Lorenz particularly, about the timing of when the restaurant would be open, would be starting operations. Clearly, their intent and goal and desire is to open as quickly as possible. The date November has been floating around as a potential date. What I received from them is that that's highly unlikely, just where they are on construction. So the latest timeline that I received from them was early 2021 for potentially opening. 2022, I'm sorry, next year. So I know that this is a highly, people are very interested in it. So are we, but the timeline is a little bit fluid as right now because of all the issues that they've been encountering. But Yeah, if they open it this year, it'll be a miracle. I think they would agree to that. But certainly I know that it's moving forward. They're pursuing with construction and there's a lot of activity going on the site currently.
Okay, thank you. Item C, update on proposed ADA compliant dual purpose beach boardwalk at 42nd Avenue. We had some further discussion about that and what the committee basically brought back. We based what we're talking about now is better maintaining the Moby mat at 42nd Avenue while also pursuing ADA compliant beach access at 34A. But we also want to look at assisting the state, through the legislature, if we can, to pass legislation amending the Beachfront Management Act to allow for the extension of the Moby mats to hard sand. One of our residents, Dr. James Smiley, has been doing some work with Joe Bustos in that regard. And I've had a couple of conversations with Representative Bustos as well. And Jim Smiley is also working with OCRM. He has some more communication with them to see if they would be open to allowing some extension of the Moby mat. So this is a work in progress. It's something that, obviously there won't be any real legislation presented until January. But if we can get OCRM to move on this in some way, maybe through Dr. Smiley's efforts, that would be good. And we'll just see where that lands. We do know that there's at least one community in the state that has done that by extending the Moby mats, and that's Hilton Head Island. And so that was where the question came up. And, it's still, again, a work in progress, and we will see where that leads us. Item D, update the proposed public dock and green space at Isle of Palms Marina. I'll say a couple of things about this. The staff has been working on this. They have not just let it, stay in place. Desiree had told us that they have 3 proposals from design firms who could formalize plans designed by Kelly Messier. And we haven't spent any money yet, and we won't until the case is adjudicated with our holdover tenant. But we have an idea of the cost, and it's a nominal cost for the designs. But we'll hold off on spending any of that until we know more. Now, later on, we will have some conversation later in the meeting in regards to where we stand on that particular item there. Item E, discussion consideration of noise agreement with Marker 116. That is still in Marker 116's hands along with their attorney. No hurry on this at this point. So that's still out there for consideration. Under new business, an ordinance to authorize the temporary use of new or additional space for outdoor dining services. That will be handled tonight. And let's see. We talked a little bit under item B of new business, a discussion of installing electrical cart charging stations at the municipal parking lot. And it came down to the possibility of a 10-year agreement with Dominion Energy. And what we asked Desiree to do is go back and get some more information for us to consider next month on real property and just see what that would all entail before we sign ourselves up for some sort of an initiative in a 10-year agreement. But it does look like something that could be promising for us to provide in the future. And item C, consideration of change order to the ATM contract for additional construction, administration services, Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $40,000. That will be on the agenda. And item B, item D, discussion and consideration of amendments to Marker 116 to allow for overnight docking and unforeseen circumstances to protect the health and welfare of patrons. And that will be coming up later this evening as well. And we talked about shared parking in the marina site. Just a couple of things here. We called a meeting with the major tenants, Marine Joint Ventures, which is Brian Berrigan, and also the Marker 116 group, Dave and Chrissy Lorenz, John Bushnell. Myself was there along with Desiree, Douglas, Carr, and I think Tyler, the marina manager that works with Brian, was there as well. So the purpose of that meeting, which was on July the 21st, was to get together and just try to get everybody on the same page in regards to shared parking, what some of the issues were between the shared parking manager and the tenants and the other tenant and, just try to get everybody on the same page. Some of our takeaways was that we needed to have them come up with some ideas that they felt that they could do to work together a little more effectively. We've got a second meeting scheduled for 8/5/21, so that's next week. And we will have that meeting in the upstairs conference room here. So more to come on that particular item there. And last but not least, the next meeting of the Real Property Committee meeting we held on Monday, August the 2nd at 1:30 PM. So ends my report, Mr. Mayor.
Great report. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
To comment on the electrical car charging station, probably not a surprise that I think this is a great topic for us to be digging into and exploring. And it's going to take those kinds of stations to make it doable for people to consider having electric vehicles. So you kind of have to be a little bit out front, but, and I'm curious to know if the conversation maybe would look at what we can do as a municipality in terms of our own vehicles. I know that we have some specifics that we have to adhere to under state guidelines for things like our police force, but maybe that's something that you can look at for the potential for us transitioning to that for
Sure,
for our own fleet, if it's
a
possible.
good point, and we can bring that up as an item for discussion under this particular issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I was gonna bring that up as well. It's interesting to see that because is that something that Dominion Energy reached out to the city about? Because I brought this up to you a couple of years ago about initiating this, and at that point, at the time, it was really expensive in order for the city to take that on. Is it it was something that we were just looking into and found out that they had a pilot program for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
I think this issue needs extensive financial analysis,
Yes.
extensive, before we agree to anything.
Yeah, it's a 10-year commitment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just say, I'm not saying check the box. I'm just saying, I'm glad that we're looking at it seriously. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, moving on. Reports from city officers, boards, commissions. Board of Zoning Appeals, no meeting. Planning Commission, the minutes are attached. However, there's been a lot of misinformation put out there. I'm going to ask Douglas again to come up forward and to kind of talk about rentals. We've heard all kinds of rumors, and I'd like to put those at bay for right now.
By way of a update, I was just going to tell you what the Planning Commission has done so far, which is really not anything other than identify the points of data that they would like for the staff to pull together for them. We've now had two working sessions, one just today about it. And there's a lot of information out there in terms of data that's available. We have county assessors data. We have the city's business license data. We have a lot of historical housing data. We have MLS sales data. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's all kind of in literally different data sets. So we're going to work on putting that together for them so that they can just identify trends. I mean, they're very, very much into looking at not only what has happened historically, but if we can see any trends emerging that might indicate that there's a change afoot. They've done this routinely, throughout their time. They just kind of did a different analysis about a year and a half ago. So it's something they're accustomed to doing. They really, it would be too early for them to come to any consensus. We've really just started pulling together the most recent information. So their expectation is as soon as they have enough information to kind of tell what the indicators are telling us, they would like to sit down with you all in a joint session to just kind of share with you what they're seeing, and then bounce off of you to see whether you can give guidance on if some of those indicators are problematic to you as a council, if you could identify those kind of at first blush, that will certainly save them from going down a track that, you may not want them to, or would be a dead end for them. So they're really on just the very beginnings of their work, but they're committed to working on it quickly. I don't, one of our initial sessions dealt with, hey, are we talking about a year-long thing that may draw on, or are we talking about something that would be kind of just a quick pull together information, see what we have, and make a quick recommendation, which that seemed to be where they felt like they wanted to go, just a quick look, a deep analysis, but at the same time, not kind of drag it on for too long.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick comment, and I've had some conversation with planning members. There's not clear direction from us as to what this would be. And I think where the public confusion comes in, and we've all been blistered by letters over the last few days, is this premise that if you have a rental license, that we're going to take your rental license away. That would be a really fun legal event for us over a lifetime. I think everyone needs to understand this is to look at, what are the trends telling us, right? Are we different than other communities? Is there a forward-looking action that the council should be looking at? But in no way is there an intention to rescind existing rental licenses that people have made life investments in. And I think that single point of clarity is what needs to be put out to the community so that we can take a deep breath and look at this the way that it should be looked at. Conversations, every community, we happened to meet with Mayor Tecklenburg when we were at MASC, same conversation. Moratoriums, what's happening with short-term rentals, what should we be doing? We're not different than any other community around here. Thank you, Jim.
Anyone else?
I am
I guess,
sorry.
ma'am.
And Douglas, I had forwarded you and Desiree a few weeks back a study that was represented in a national news article that suggested that Isle of Palms was at the apex of this trend of with an incredible amount of increase in short-term rental activity. Do you have a sense whether that is accurate, that we're experiencing something even more extraordinary than other places in the country?
So I don't personally have any knowledge. I mean, I've read that article. I looked at the source of that data. I don't have any knowledge of the source of that data. Members of the Planning Commission, certain members that are kind of tied to the industry, seem to think that that was, a lot of that was a basically unreliable data that was generating traffic, basically clicks on the, and that they felt, they did look at it, they researched it a bit and felt like there wasn't, those weren't solid indicators of really what's going on.
Okay.
I don't know, it's kind of beyond my wheelhouse and I didn't, but that's what there did not seem to be a huge deal of alarm from that
Source
set
of
of data, that
information.
source.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
real quick, just to manage expectations, Desiree, Douglas, and I have had a conversation about this joint working session, whether it's Ways and Means or Council, doesn't matter, but maybe the first week or so in September, just to let these folks have some time to get the data, accumulate it, put it together, study it, and then come have a working session before, to Douglas's point, they spend a lot of time heading down a path.
Yeah, our hope is to have useful information by August 18th. That's kind of, that's our goal for sitting down and having it all together and kind of having our first conversations about what the data is indicating would be middle of August. And as Phillips mentioned, yeah, I think it would be useful right on the heels of that to get together with you all.
Okay, perfect. No one else? Douglas, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee minutes are attached. Reports from special or joint committees, none. Petitions received, referred, disposed of, none. Bills already in possession. The first one is kind of a housekeeping one. Ordinance 2021-08, an ordinance amending Title VII licensing regulation. It really had to do with dates. And Douglas, I'm not sure if you want to. Go ahead. You lived this. I should have sit in that front chair.
So this, as you all will recall, we've just modified this ordinance. It was my error in putting the wrong gross income reporting date. I put the wrong 6-month window in there. Debbie, of course, caught it and alerted me to it, but it's like 3 days too late. So this is just a correction of the reporting, the gross income reporting dates.
Okay, any questions for Douglas before he gets away? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none? Nicole?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Number 2, ordinance 2021-10, an ordinance to authorize the temporary use of new or additional space for outdoor dining services. Do I,
Motion to approve.
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none. Nicole?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on. Introduction of new bills, resolutions, proclamations. Ordinance 2021-11, an ordinance to alter the hiring process for department heads. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And
Title only, right?
title only. So Nicole?
Nay.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on. Miscellaneous, update on eviction proceedings against holdover tenant title waive water sports. I'm going to ask our legal representative to come up and give us a little shakedown. A brief,
Want to give an update on the legal proceedings?
just a brief overview. So otherwise, we've got it on our agenda. Brief, right.
July 7th, you all are well aware of the case. July 7th, there was a trial in the magistrate's court, which resulted in a hung jury. The judge declared a mistrial, so the matter will be rescheduled unless the court finds that there is a legal issue which would preclude a further jury trial. And that matter is under advisement with the magistrate's court presently. That's it.
That's the, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to do the unpopular and comment. I sat through almost 10 hours in the courtroom. And I have asked, I've had numerous people ask me what happened in that courtroom. How did we have a hung jury? And I don't mean any aspersions on Councilmember Ward, but he testified for the defense. And I think the public deserves to know that there were points of testimony that were not accurate. And I think everyone up here,
Yeah, I really don't think we need to be going into.
I'm not going to be cut off on this because I sat there through it and I have been told in that testimony that the chair of real property did not allow any movement on leases, and none of us in this council have the authority within a committee to block another committee member from having an agenda item. And secondly, the other point that was brought up during that, Jimmy, if I may, the other point that was brought up was that this council voted to have a workshop with Tidal Wave to negotiate a new lease. And I think it's important that the public understand neither of those things happened. Beyond that, I don't have any comment on this. And to Brent, we're not asking for legal advice, but this is in the spirit of transparency. The public deserves to know what happened.
Okay, thank you very much, Brent. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Discussion regarding engaging a consultant to represent the city in Columbia. This was brought to me by Councilmember Ward. I know our sister beach community, Folly Beach, has a lobbyist who represents them for everything that happens over there. Councilmember Ward?
Yeah, I have a brief statement that I typed up. It's in all caps, but I thought I could get away without these, but I'm not. So, it's under 3 minutes. I rehearsed it a couple of times. But I'm just gonna read it to you, and it's addressed to Isle of Palm City Council, July 27th. Isle of Palm City Council is at a crossroads. We have the opportunity to control our own destiny or not, but steps must be made now. We are late to this issue, but hopefully not too late. Recently, outside groups, meaning groups from off the island, have somehow influenced state lawmakers to institute policies that are not in our best interest. Home rule has been seemingly cast aside. In its place, regulations have been enacted that are detrimental to our health, safety, and way of life. Is there an answer to the question of how we can wrestle control of our community back here on pertinent issues relative to our island and away from the grip of state legislators and senators? I believe there is. I understand a citizens group is formed on the island to try and protect our way of life and our future. I applaud their efforts of allocating resources and assets to challenge decisions by the South Carolina State House of Representatives and Senate that have adversely affected our island. It is my understanding they have retained the services of consultants/lobbyists to push back against state laws that limit our jurisdiction. We, as a city, should do the same. That is, hire our own consultants. This new citizens group is good and most welcome, but what if one day they aren't around anymore? Plus, we need our interests represented, the island as a whole, instead of relying solely on a private group to influence lawmakers in Columbia and, if need be, Washington. I understand the Municipal Association of South Carolina has lobbyists to represent us at the State House, but we are only one of 271 incorporated municipalities they represent. We need our own consultants to look out for our unique issues. With so much legislation being introduced at the state level, we, Isle of Palms, can have a hard time finding time to be in Columbia and to represent our interests on a regular basis. By retaining a consultant, we can get a seat at the table and have our voices heard. With governmental procedures sometimes being slow and taking longer than desired, lobbyists can speed up the process by influencing key policymakers in the approval or disapproval of certain bills and policies. Or in our case, policy decisions being rushed through the South Carolina Department of Transportation at breakneck speed. In other words, a reconfiguration of the Isle of Palms connector. This is about being represented in front of key people and having our voices heard. I believe we should seek competent professionals to look out for our interests in Columbia. We can bring about real benefits, control back to us, the elected representatives of citizens and property owners of Isle of Palms. We have the power to affect change right here, right now. Thank you for your time and consideration. A footnote, I did some homework on this, and there's a lot of municipalities, some as small as Clinton has a population of a little over 8,000, and many other municipalities that use consultants in Columbia to keep an eye on things and making sure that we're protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good suggestion. Okay, our next meeting is Tuesday, August the 24th at 6 p.m. I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight. It's a big crowd and we'd like to have citizen involvement. Our next item, which is unfortunately called executive session. In accordance with South Carolina Code Section 30-470A2, to receive legal advice and legal update regarding the eviction proceedings against Tidal Wave Water Sports and the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by Joshua Hooser. Upon returning to open session, the committee may take action on matters discussed in executive session. No decisions will be made during executive session. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Go.
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Pound,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor? You're on record.